Hello everyone, I'm Caroline Lindsay, President of the Professional Saddle Fitters Association. A very, very warm welcome to everybody here in the first of our Saddle Fitting Summit series. We are absolutely thrilled to get these three big names in the world of innovative saddle design and fitting. All have differing concepts, so we're in for a real treat of a discussion and debate. Our aim is for you to take away some new ideas from tonight. Put any questions in the chat and the panel will pause to answer them at intervals. So why is the PSFA running this very important event? Well, the main reason is that horse saddle rider research is being generated at a very fast rate. And the work of the fitter appears to be getting more and more complex as we discover more about the interaction between the horse saddle and rider. However, it's essential to have the fitting knowledge and experience if you intend to apply those research results. So it's not all about the research. It's just as important to have a huge bank of fitting and experience and knowledge, which my PhD is confirming for me, my study. So before we begin the discussion about saddle fitting protocol and the elements necessary to achieve best fit, with some visuals to illustrate the discussion, let's hear from our panel members individually about their saddle design and fitting adventures so far. And I'm giving them about up to 2 minutes each. We'll have Maria first because it's ladies first, and you happen to be first on the screen below me.
Okay. I hope you can all hear me. I'm Maria, and I am speaking from Sweden. And I'm really an unwilling saddle fitter and an unwilling saddle maker. I used to be in the racing industry, and I used to be a person who would try to figure out why horses would not function as people wanted them to function. So for me, the saddle is just one of the tools that you can use to make life easier for the horse and make it easier to balance with the horse. And I've spent basically all my life teaming up with other people who know about different things when it comes to the horse. Massage therapists and vets, acupuncturists, farriers, and so forth. And I was very lucky to meet some brilliant saddle people when I was quite young and starting out. And that just put me on track to work with saddles. And the whole idea for me was just to basically find out how I can make horse and rider function better. I was very lucky because when I started out in Sweden in '98, I quite early got the team of Kira Sjöklund and all her elite dressage riders. And I also got the full elite of the eventing riders and some of the jumping riders in Sweden. And working with this level of riders always gives you a lot of challenges, and they have very different horses and new horses coming in and new problems. So for me, always being interested in why is this horse having a problem? Why isn't this really working? That's what triggers me. So this is why I'm in the business. How can I make these two individuals understand and function better together?
Thank you. We have Bradley next on the list. If you can tear yourself away from your Rubik's Cube, I suppose you've just done that in 1 minute.
No. So, hello everybody. My name's Bradley Whale. I am how's the best way to describe this? I am an equine osteopath, but a little bit more than that. I am the inventor and creator of the Ipertain saddle, which is quite weird and unique. It is the world's first 2-part freely interchangeable saddle. So yeah, I'm kind of the inventor of that, unfortunately. My history is very long and convoluted, and you could probably lose about 2 or 3 hours doing it. So I'll try and keep it relatively brief. I was a junior international show jumper, and then basically then went off into osteopathy, trained as an osteopath, and then trained in multiple other therapies as well. I then also proceeded to write a couple of books, which were very old now. They're about a decade old, so they're not worth reading at the moment, on equine biomechanics, physiology, psychology, and sociology, and spirituality. I then also have worked international, working around the world, both on humans and horses. I've worked in various professional bodies. I've worked as a consultant for very large Hollywood actors, and kind of royalty and various things like that. Worked within various professional bodies, as in sporting professional bodies, Formula One, Olympic Games, GB teams, so on and so forth, with various different athletes, both equine and also standard human. I like cycling and rowing and various things like that. So yeah, it just keeps going on and on and on. So really, I don't want to bore you too much with that. So yeah, I'm very much kind of driven in terms of objective analysis and kind of engineering and standardization of products and product manufacture. That's kind of my particular area I'm very interested in, and would like the industry to kind of certainly raise their game on that. So yeah.
Great. And Jochen. Oh, we got you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jochen Schleese, and the first 6 years of my life, I grew up in Buenos Aires. My dad taught physics and math in multiple countries, so we were always going from one country to another. My mother's side is in the medical field, and my dream job was always to do anything medical side, either as a veterinarian or as a human. And we come finally back to Germany, where I started my career. And I was very, very lucky to represent Germany as a 3-day event rider, as a junior rider. And back then I was sponsored for multiple saddles company. And every time I got another saddle, the saddle fitter told me another story. So okay, whatever. I got a free saddle, I got sponsored, I got money, off you go. And my dad, being a physicist, always says to me, you need to always ask the question, the why question, because the person knows the how will always follow the person who knows the why. And he kept asking me, son, what's your calling? Why are you doing what you're doing? I says, well, I'm teaching, I'm judging, so I'm happy. He says, well, now you got to do a profession. So I spent too much time in the barn, didn't get the degrees or the marks to get to medical school. And through Fluger, I became a saddle maker. And I worked in a very, very prestigious company. I also worked for several other companies around the world, as well as in England. And I noticed, just like as a rider, everybody has a little different method, and everybody has a different way of making saddles. So when the question came about how to actually fit it, they had their system, but it was never really explained from the anatomy type of view, more from their point of view. So off I went, worked for different companies, made saddles, and then I went to the University of Utrecht in Holland, and I saw a horse on the treadmill and a rider on top. And underneath the saddle injected a glass fiber camera, very, very small camera, where they showed how the saddle interacted with the structure of the horse. I was bawling. I had to leave the auditorium. I called my dad immediately and says, Daddy, I know why I do. I know what my calling is. Nobody ever should lose their best friend because of not knowing what they don't know. From that moment on, I developed the Saddle Fit for Life Academy. We are on 5 different continents. We are, as a matter of consideration, as an elective for bioresearch management system in several different universities. And it's based on protecting the horse and rider from long-term damage. And it's not on this company or on this company's philosophy. It's basically what kind of Brad says, to look at more from the biomechanics physiology. From there, I have my own company. We're making Schleese saddles, and we have numerous awards and patents, from gullet plates to stirrup bars. And in New Zealand, we've got 2019, the Biney Tree as a Product of the Year award. Enough about me. I'm excited to be part of this summit. All about the horse, and I think with everybody involved, we can definitely make a change.
Great, thank you very much. So I've just had a look through the list of attendees, and the majority, looks like about 90% or more, are saddle fitters or therapists that are checking saddles, and there are some people interested in becoming saddle fitters. We hope we don't put you off. So let's get started. First question. I think this one's for Bradley. Why is it that having protocol or having a set of procedures is important for professional saddle fitting?
Okay. Right. So the aspect of a procedure is has many different connotations in terms of how people interpret the term procedure. The one thing which you've got to remember is when you're talking about a procedure is that it is there in order to protect. Okay, so any form of procedure which we develop or anybody develops, and that's in terms of medical or kind of safety standards or anything like that, is designed purely with the intention of trying to protect. So a procedure is split, especially in like the therapeutic world, is split into three categories. You have protection of the client, okay? You have protection of the fitter, okay? In this connotation, this is the practitioner or the fitter, however you want to describe it. And then you have protection of the industry, okay? So any procedure which is developed, it is designed to protect those three aspects, okay? Protection of the client, i.e. protection of the horse, the rider, so on and so forth. Protection of the fitter, i.e. don't get sued, so on and so forth. Protection of the industry, never bring the industry into disrepute, okay? So that's the primary aspect and the primary goal of any kind of procedure. Procedures are designed to never, and this is the difficulty, is they are designed never to restrict or inhibit the performance of the individual, i.e. this is more relevant to saddle fitting. So a procedure is not designed to restrict or inhibit the performance of the individual, but it is rather designed to provide a stable platform to allow them to, how's a way to describe it? It's designed to create a stable platform for everybody involved. That is not only fitters, that is also customers. They have a standard protocol which they understand and then follow. It's also good for the entirety of the industry, i.e. also the manufacturers as well, because then if the manufacturers understand a fitting protocol, they can then make their products more effective and more efficient for that process as well. So this is also an aspect of for the manufacturers as well. That trying to create this procedure is also going to enhance that industry and that profession as well. The thing is the best way to think about a procedure is in the unfortunate event that anything goes wrong, okay, everyone equally has a degree of protection, okay? The industry, the individual, and the customer, okay? And that the reasons for having that procedure is also accountability and traceability. So if there is something which goes wrong, okay, God hope that nothing goes wrong, but we have traceability and accountability of the reasons why it went wrong, which then means that we can improve that procedure and then help to protect people, kind of fitters, customers, and the industry further and to a greater degree. You know, this is an evolving process. A procedure is evolution. So don't consider anything which we come in as kind of necessarily that's fixed in stone and it's never going to change. It has to change. It has to evolve because products evolve, horses evolve, people evolve, our knowledge evolves. So therefore, procedures have to evolve. So that's it, basically, and the whole point of procedure is purely protection.
Super. And I'll just say very quickly that for me, it's about setting a standard and your own standard beyond the basic procedure, and also it helps to keep you consistent as well while you're working. So Maria, would you like to add to that? I saw you making notes. Maria's lucky, she's got an assistant.
Yeah, and her mouse is so advanced I cannot even unmute my mic. Yeah, okay. So when we're talking about protocol and about actual fitting, we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we need to know? What do we need to know about the horse? What do we need to know about the rider?
Yeah.
When do we need to know it? Do we need to know things before we actually turn up at the fitting, so that we're not surprised with the way the horse is looking, the shape the horse is in, or the shape of the rider? How, part of the protocol is really starting before we even make an appointment. And we may go into, what our different protocols are later, so that we can discuss that together. But so I think that what do we need to know? And when we know it, what do we do with it? How transparent are we with the customer, with what we then know, what it means to the customer and to the rider, and about the way going forward? Because saddle fitting, to me, is not something that you do, you fix it, you sell it, and then you go. Because that is not how static horses are today. They might have been a bit more static 30 years ago before the new breeding, but today we are riding really young horses. We are breeding horses differently. We have very unexperienced riders coming out, wanting to ride and to train and compete with very little knowledge about how a horse functions. And they may have expectations that we are going to fix whatever they perceive as their problem. So we need to make protocols where the owner actually gets to, like the two early, like you mentioned, where they understand and are able to take the responsibility to team up with us, so that then they can do a few tasks and give information back to us, so that we know when we need to help them. And today, many people will use a system that Peter Menet invented once, and that was, just how to measure the width of a horse and what the top line looks like. Well, everybody who's worked with any kind of measuring knows that if you do a measuring pre-riding and after riding, the measures will be completely different. So when we collect information and when we work with it, we also have to know what might happen with that data, how to handle that data, and how to share that data with the customer, because horses are in constant change. So the protocol, people will say, oh, this is a measure so that I know exactly how to order a saddle. Well, I never, really believed in that, because the horse is going to change between now and when the saddle arrives. So the measure is only a data of today. And then it comes into, what do we expect to happen based on what is going to be done with the horse between now and when the saddle arrives, or now and the service. So this is a very much more complex job than many people may think, where we actually have to team up with the massage therapist, with the osteopath, with the vet, and with the rider and the trainer, to kind of look at what's going to happen going forward here. Where are we and what's going to happen? And then what will we need to do with the saddle to allow the horse to do that change? Okay.
Super. And you touched on something there, which is something that I'm really getting into at the moment, or trying to get across, and that's this rider accountability. It's no longer the whole responsibility of the saddle fitter to deal with every problem that the rider has. And we'll be coming back to your system of what you do, Maria, before you actually see the client, which does build in some accountability there as you give them some homework to do before you will even visit them. Jochen, would you like to add to that?
I'd love to. Well, when I lived in Germany, it was pretty easy to drive back and forth to the barn. But when I moved to North America in 1986, the distances are huge here. And sometimes we fly to the customer. Just like Maria says, it is absolutely important that you get the information before you even go on the plane, why you go there, and what information do we need. So we call it our pilot checklist, because just like a pilot, every time he flies that 747 over the Atlantic, he goes through a checklist. And it's not like he forgot to know how to fly a plane. It's just that you get very, complacent. You know, you start to get, oh, I've done that so long, I know what I'm doing. And you forget things. So the form, what we call evaluation, so we evaluate and we look not only at the rider, the horse, the movement, all this would be recorded onto this form. And you mentioned the customer will take accountability. Absolutely, because we rely on the truth, what the customer says. So if the fitter would ask, how many times do you ride this horse? They say, 4 or 5 times. And then back over her shoulder, you see somebody rolling the eye and says, the last time I see her on the horse was a year ago. So we got to take the customer's word. And then when we go on and we measure the saddle, the horse, and the rider, and Maria mentioned the measurements and who invented what first is no here or there. Fact is that the measurements, you can use 3D printed tools, which literally a 5-year-old can measure the horse very accurate. You just stroke it over the horse. It looks like a bicycle chain. And you cut it out of cardboard and it fits like a glove. Very, very simple with the level on top. Here's the funny part. You measure the horse and the front legs are 6 inches apart, inside cornet band to inside cornet band. You cut the tracing out, it fits perfect. Then you put the horse at 8 inches in the front. Measurements don't even come close. So in the late 90s, there was a company in Germany who had the horse on a treadmill and they used laser where they measure the horse's back. So we know that there are 9 different measurements in the horse's back when the horse moves. And that's without the rider and the saddle. That's just the movement of the horse's back. Today, you can use your smartphone and it's an app, it's for free, and you can measure the horse. And then you have every square millimeter, 100%, providing you recorded the distance of the cornet band in the front and the horse stands correct. So measurements are just a part, like Maria said. So the evaluation, or what we call procedure, and I love how Brad explained that, is there to protect the fitter as well as the client and the manufacturer. Because again, we rely on the client's information. This is why we make sure the client signs their report. What it clearly says, yes, the information I have provided you, it's true. I write every day, right? So if that's true, then they sign that. And they get the documentation, the protocol in their hand at that moment, at that time. No matter if they buy a saddle from us or from somebody else, it is what we call a Polaroid picture, the moment, the day the customer is there. Very often they say, I keep that saddle only on this horse. Meanwhile, they told you they have 5 other horses. So the saddle fitter does this best job. And when they ask the question, how many horses you put that saddle on? And the customer says, oh, only this horse. And the saddle fitter knows they have 5 more. And then the question comes, would you keep that only on this horse or on all 5? No, only on this. Keep in mind, they get a copy and they're signed. Very often the saddle fitter gets a call back, my saddle doesn't fit the horse anymore. And you look at it and the tree is just flattened out and the padding is just flat. And you scratch the head and says, what's wrong? That saddle was a brand new Jaguar, Harry Dobbs, Ideal, whatever saddle. Okay? And all of a sudden, it's not even the same. So there is where the procedure comes really, really, really into play, that not only the client has protection, but the fitter has protection. And also the company who makes saddles has protection. If you have disposable saddles with the carbon fiber, plastic, or wood tree, you know you can't force them and stretch them and adjust them. They're not meant to do this. It's kind of like you have rubber boots and want to resole and stitch leather soles on a rubber boot. Right? So there are saddle trees, they are meant to adjust, and saddles are not adjust. So imagine you are a company and you have a saddle fitter who goes out and adjusts the saddles. I mean, there's so many YouTubes from saddle makers from England who complained that their fitters, not their fitters, but fitters, stretched them with a hydraulic press and broke their tree. So again, if the procedure, I'll come back to what Brad says, has to protect everything. So I'm a big component there that is a must in my point of view.
Super. Just a couple of things to mention there. We had, linking with this, what you just said, Jochen, was we had a very eye-opening presentation from an equine solicitor in January, and really stressing the point that your terms and conditions and your records have to be accurate in everything you do, or you're out and exposed. Also, I was just thinking of giving a super hint there, is that maybe our viewers, our fitters with websites, they should look to posting the pre-fitting information on their website, perhaps, as much as possible, because that might save you time. So that's something a lot of you do, but it's a good thing to do, to put the information on the website. Okay, next question. I think a lot of you have already answered this, but I'll check. What does the term fit mean for each of you? I'll start with Maria. We'll go to the right-hand square.
Yeah, you know, the word fit might have meant other things many years ago, but the way that the industry looks today, the horses and the riders, I think the most important thing is actually that we team up with the customer and the customer's team, because you have no absolute fit on the modern horse. You have so much change going on in young horses that are either growing and going into training, horses that are leaving professional yards being bought by amateurs. You have horses being sold, shipped, changing environments. And we can no longer expect, when I started, people expected to buy a saddle and to have it for, you know, the next 15, 20 years. And that was what they wanted. And then they wanted to reflock it now and then. Today, with the foam saddles that are out there, and the very, very big amount of plastic trees and foam things, people expect to kind of buy a saddle and have it fixed. Then it's kind of fixed for them in their mind. And this means that they run into a lot of problems because they don't understand their horse's top line. They don't understand what's going on with their horse. So I think that fitting is really what we defined already very, very early when we started. Fitting is about getting to the situation where you have a functional, happy horse with a functional rider on top, so that you can have the best coming out of your horse and for your horse to develop. That is really the goal, so that you have, not like we have today, that you have to take the horse to the vet, and many horses are taken out way too early. So our goal with fitting is to really make sure you can have and use your horse for a very long time and get the most out of it. And the only way we can do that is by teaming up and actually conveying knowledge to the consumer. Because if the consumer does not understand what's going on, or what they can do, or what they need to do, it doesn't matter how good I may fit that horse, because things will happen after I have left. So our goal is really to always give knowledge so that the rider can start to take a few steps into understanding what they can do just to check their saddle themselves now and then, just putting their hand under the saddle and knowing what it means. Just looking at, what is the top line looking like in certain areas of my horse? Is something going wrong? And having them form that trust with us, and maybe with the massage therapist, to call us more often, to tell us more often when something is going on. And I think that's how the future is going to have to look, that we are teaming up with different professionals around the horse, not just selling and leaving. So forming a team with a client, that is what it looks like for us.
Okay. Great. And there we can expect 50% of those sport horses in the UK to be lame, not just in the UK, but other countries are showing that that's happening there too. I think it was Switzerland that have that research done. So saddle fitters or anyone working with horses, sport horses, can expect the horse to have some form of compensation there, and often lameness, which the rider is not aware of. So we definitely, perhaps when fitting new saddles or replacement saddles, if the customer client says that there's been a problem with the old saddle, then I think that's a red warning flag to be very careful that you're not fitting to a lame horse. Bradley, what does the term fit mean for you?
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of add into a caveat into what you just said. Is the equine anatomist, I think it's Sharon May Davis, I think it is, off the top of my head. She, in her research, she found that 100% of ridden horses in her research had guaranteed elbow trauma in some way, shape, or form. So you're going to always find some way, shape, or form there's going to be a trauma or a compensation or anything like that. So that is normal, that is natural, that is in fact, that is part of nature. You've got to remember that the concept of symmetry and so on and so forth is a human construct. It is not it's not natural. It is not evolution, because symmetry indicates perfection, and perfection is an element of non-evolution. You are perfect. You cannot grow. You cannot change. You cannot evolve. So this concept of symmetry is a bit of a weird one in terms of kind of saddles and saddle fitting. So hence why you're always going to find horses which are asymmetrical, which are it's perfectly normal. So just as a caveat to that, you're always going to have trauma. You're always going to have compensation. So you kind of relatively got to get used to it. What is fit? Just going back to the original question to kind of thing. I'm probably going to be a little bit airy and fairy on this one, to be honest. So I was making a few notes whilst Maria was kind of talking, because I find it quite fascinating. What is fit? Fit to me is where a fit should facilitate the unique union between the individual horse and the rider. It should, to some degree, allow the horse and the rider to express themselves effectively and efficiently. And that is achieved by creating harmony within movement and sensation for both the horse and the rider. That to me is, it sounds very airy and fairy, but that is to me what fitting is, to create that kind of unionship between kind of horse and rider, and to allow them to express it and to be effective and efficient and create harmony, so that the rider can feel the horse and the horse can feel the rider. That symbiotic aspect. The aspect which allows that is the saddle. And the saddle, in my view, because you can't talk about fit unless you talk about saddles, is that the saddle should, in some regards, reduce the conflict of comfort. Okay, because we have a situation, a scenario about comfort, which is a larger conversation which we can have later on if we so want. But it should reduce the conflict of comfort between horse and rider, and it should be of a suitable quality and standard to meet the required purposes of the horse and the rider. To me, that's it. That is the fitting and the saddle, because you can't talk about the two independently. You have to talk about them together. So yeah, that's how I perceive it, really. So yeah.
Super. I'm going to come back to you on the symmetry point because I'm obsessed with it. But what we are referring to here is functional symmetry.
Yeah. It's just this is where we have that kind of universal language, and we need to have that universal language, and we need to have those conversations, because one person's interpretation of symmetry is very different to another person's interpretation of symmetry. So, and this is where we've all got to be having these quite tough kind of conversations in some regards. We all have to have this kind of not shouting matches, because you never want it to turn into that, but you've got to have that kind of respect and conversation where you kind of go, what do you mean by symmetry? What do I mean by symmetry? What do they mean by symmetry? Because we've got to create that universal language within the industry. And if we don't have that universal language within the industry, within manufacturing or within saddle fitting, you're always doomed to fail, because there is no universal language. So we've got to create that universal language. So you're absolutely right. You're talking about functional symmetry. But as I say, I could be talking about dysfunctional symmetry or perceptive symmetry. And this is why we have that conversation. So it is
dysfunctional symmetry, which we are actually focused on as body workers. It's how we make a living. It's resolving many of the obvious asymmetry issues. Just going to come in with a couple of questions before I go on to Jochen. So we have the horse can build and they change, so we need to change the saddle after the horse. We all read about the physical development of the horse, especially the sacroiliac area. At what age do the experts think that we should really be fitting saddles to horses? That's a great question that we'll come back to. And I think it needs to go much farther than that. An enlightened rider needs to integrate the saddle fitter's information with the chiropractor, with the farrier, and even the veterinarian. Yeah, that really does sum it up and comes back to rider accountability. So I think a lot of that came in when you were speaking, Bradley, and possibly Maria. So if you just want to say or respond to those.
Well, I can touch on the age here, because it would be nice to hear what you other two think. People they do want to put a saddle on a 3-year-old, and they want to put the saddle on the 4-year-old, and I understand that because they have competitions now. But really, things happen so quickly with these young horses that, if it was up to me, I would not be buying any saddles for horses younger than 5.5. Preferably even 6. I know that's impossible for the riders, but that's my thought on that. Bradley, what are you thinking?
No, I'm exactly the same as you. In fact, it's kind of like go older. From a skeletal perspective, you literally sit there and kind of go, I want to pull my hair out. It's 3. No, I was classically trained as a rider. So in which case if we had a horse which was 3 or 4, you didn't ride it. And not being so rude, I'm a big guy. You don't ride them. What you do is you do the groundwork. You do loads of groundwork. You get the respect on the ground. You get the work on the ground. You do all of that. And when the horse is strong enough, which is 6 and potentially older, because different breeds, you've got to remember, they mature and they grow and they stabilize it, and they the process of osteogenesis occurs a lot later in some breeds. So yeah, I'm kind of with Maria. I'd probably push it a little bit further, but then I understand, you know, it creates this scenario of what we call glass horses, where the young horses, they're ridden, yes, they're high performance. It's kind of the typical kind of Russian gymnastic kind of mentality. They're highly mobile, they're highly flexible, they can perform, but when they kind of get to middle age, they are crippled, they're riddled with arthritis. You just see this problem.
We see it happening at 6 here. You know, they come into the youngster classes, and at 6, these horses are already over and done with, and it's really sad. When I started out, we saw in a couple of years, especially in Stockholm, where they were importing a lot of dressage horses, suddenly all the horses were standing with a very sharp angle to the wither and very standing shoulder. And we were like, what is going on? Why are the horses looking like this? And of course, these are horses that then were started to be broken early by, what we call professionals, and then sold to people to compete with at very early age. And we have to break this trend, I think.
Okay, I'll just add a little bit to that, is that if you keep horses at home, you'll probably notice that probably at least once a day, maybe twice, regardless of age, they will take off around the field, providing they've got one big enough, and they will practice their flight skills. So that would suggest that the horse is inherently athletic, but it's the back function that I think we're talking about here. When we load the back, that's the real issue. And also horses living in, not getting a chance to do that flight practice.
I kept horses out for a long time, Caroline. And at where we are, that flight hour is normally at 7:30 at night. And we call it the running hour.
Wow.
And of course, they will run quite fast, which is really good for their back.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of horses, certainly in my area, this part of England, is that the trend for taped off paddocks, small little areas where they can't really gallop, they can't be with each other. Yeah, it protects them in one way, but in another, it leaves them open to risk. So also horses can be bred to look like they're athletic, our young sport horses, but functionally they are not, and developmentally they are not athletic enough to do more than zip around the field every night at 7:30. Once we load them, then that's a whole different issue. Sorry, Jochen, we kept you waiting there.
I think Jochen see a lot of these sport horses, so shoot.
Okay, I'm going to back to the original question. What does fit mean to you? In my last 45 years, I traveled the globe more than a dozen times, and I came across pretty much 8 different types of fitting. 8 different types of saddle fitting. And as we have many therapists and saddle fitters listens to us, my advice is ask the client. As a rider, I will give you a different answer as a judge. When I'm sitting in the booth and somebody comes to me and the saddle and the rider hanged on to the right side, that is not fitting. From a judge's point of view, from a trainer, my horse and rider doesn't progress, doesn't fit. From a saddle fitter, I have to make a decision which of those 8 fittings I believe in. For me, after seeing so many diagnostic tools, from simple thermography, heart monitor, computerized saddle pads, from all these different types of saddle fitting, for me is only one crystal clear, is to make sure to protect horse and rider from long-term damage. I have visited veterinarians who are worked in the UK, in the United Emirates, as well as in the States, who collected horses' skeleton. And not just skeleton. She has the whole video, she has the whole life story of each horse. And the deformity is unbelievable. And I'm talking about long-term damage. We, as saddle fitters or saddle makers, part of these 8 different fits, you got to keep in mind, some of them start riding at 1.5 years. Maria, you said you're coming from a racehorse industry. You know how early they start there. You know, in the Western world, it's absolutely crucial what they do. We know that the scapula has not developed until the horse is 4 years old. At 6.5 years old, the horse has developed the 32 growth plates on the spine, and we put in a saddle on. So my belief and fit is to protect the horse and rider throughout their life while giving both comfort and maximum their performance. Now, I as a saddle fitter or I as a rider have to make a decision. Do I want a disposable saddle or non-disposable saddle? How deep are my pockets? Do I want a saddle what can change through the change of the horse's life? Or do I want a saddle, keep buying a new saddle? Depends what you're in. So my advice to a saddle fitter is really, really clear. Nail down what's important for the client. And over 80% you will hear they love their horses and they want to make sure there is no long-term damage. And there's enough research, not from saddle fitters or saddle makers. I'm talking about individual universities throughout the world who have written wonderful articles, not sponsored by companies. We know that atrophy starts at, what was it, 1.66? I might misquote it, so let's strike that from the record. There's a certain amount of pressure when the horse doesn't get, the muscle doesn't get enough nutrition and blood flow. So obviously, saddle fitting is there to distribute the pressure over a larger area while not sitting on ligaments, nerves, tendons, or bone. So this is a very long answer, and to click on what Maria and Bradley were saying, and you, Caroline, is it's also the type of riding. You know, Xenophon was the first Greek militarist who wrote it down on paper 2,500 years ago, black and white, how we ride a horse. And back in 1996, an association formed by Stückelberger, Klaus Balkenhol, and Heuschmann, they were top trainers, riders, and competitors. They called it Xenophon, to say we have to stop to put in 4-year-olds in an FEI class. Ridiculous. We have to stop, like Maria says, to ask these young horses so much. But in the reality is there is this massive amount of industry, power, money. We live in the now time. We want everything to happen now. Feeding horses costs a lot of money these days. So maybe I get my horse to Grand Prix much faster. The breeding has changed so dramatically that the little babies have to go on their knees to graze. I mean, we can go on and on and on. For all fitters who listen to this, make sure you pick what you like and what you can justify in your heart, what you can support as fitting. For me, protect the horse and rider from long-term damage. That's it, period.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good time to make everybody aware here that you must listen to Roly Owers from the World Horse Welfare. Actually, I'll post a link. I'm sure there's a presentation of him suggesting this, is that horse riding is in crisis. We've already lost some events in Australia. I think it's jump racing. And that we may lose the social license or permission or approval, thanks to this lovely internet we've got and social media, if we don't all do our bit to clean up our act, so that it may be that within the next decade, possibly within our lifetimes, in many countries, we may not be able to get on a horse's back. So we all need to be aware of that. A couple of questions here, comments. How do we encourage vets to recognise that a lot of back problems are actually saddle fitting problems, and that assessing this in the first instance could prevent unnecessary investigation investigations? I've got an answer for that. Some years ago, I wrote to all the vets in my area offering an independent saddle consultancy, and I didn't even get one acknowledgement from them. So some vets have taken it on board. I think some are, or they should be, making it part of the pre-purchase vetting. And how much poor saddle fit contributes to lameness problems, which will not resolve until the saddle is addressed. I have to add that rider load is part of, it's not just the saddle, it's the way the rider loads it. Would anyone like to add anything to those comments from?
Yes, I'd like to give it a try. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we know for a fact that people don't like changes. Only wet babies like change. So how do we get people to change? In general, people only change through fear or pain. It was painful for me to be pulled from the team because my horse had, no, he wasn't lame, but he was not clear. So we could not go to the 84 qualifying Olympics because my dressage test was not clean. When we trotted him on the halter, he was clean. On the saddle, it was not smooth. It came somewhere from the shoulder. Back then we didn't know. And of course I was sponsored. I had saddle fitters, the whole 9 yards. Okay. So I thought I did everything right. So if we ask the question about the veterinarians, what's the oath of the vet? Do no harm to the horse. That's what the vets live by. I don't know in the UK, but I know in the States, when the vets come out of the veterinarian colleges here, it costs them a fortune. And most of the time, when they ask for their bill, they get yelled at it. Oh my God, how much does that cost for you to come out? Okay, so there is also a massive high suicide on veterinarians. Because deep in their heart, they don't want to see these animals in pain. So now to the question, how do we get veterinarians to assess saddles more? You just simple ask the vets. Do you want to follow your oath or the pocket? Because it's much easier to sell an Advil than a bottle of water. What I mean with that is, preventive medicine is hard to sell. To say to and educate the consumer, the saddle, given on the research from Zurich, from Scotland, from the UK, everywhere, from so many different universities, what is driven by veterinarians. It's their research. If this happens to the horse from a saddle, this will happen to the horse. I mean, it's all there, black and white. So they can say that, but that costs a lot of time. How do you charge for this? Sometimes it's better to just inject. And there's an awful lot of injection going on. And it's very mean what I say here, just as we have very shitty saddle fitters, osteopaths, saddle makers, and vets, it's in every profession. So if you want the reaction of a vet, just ask them. Just plain out ask them, are you ready for change? Are you ready really to follow your oath?
I took a step further. I started actually talking to clinics with vets. And I said, would you be interested in looking at the saddle as a part of your analysis of the horse? And they said, yeah, does it matter? And I said, yes, it does. And they invited me to actually come to the clinics and to lecture them. And we have seen a result of that. Because as a few vets start to learn and to be educated in that, the riders also feel more trust and comfortable with some of these vets that are actually developing their knowledge. We see now a big move for vets to learn chiropractic and osteopathic moves, because they are seeing that they've come to the end of just injecting. So I actually had a saddle fitter who became an osteopath, and now the whole veterinarian clinic she worked for is training to become osteopaths. So we have to work with these clinics and with these vets to be quite proactive and offering to work with them. And I see it working.
Yeah, with us was a huge change at the University of Sao Paulo. There's many veterinarians, and that's exactly what they did, what you just said. And all of them, they do the Saddle Fit for Life course, and they have that in their program.
Yes.
In North America, different stories. I can't speak for England or for Germany because I don't live there anymore since '86.
Now, we can't hear you, Caroline.
I can tell you that in the UK, certainly in the small animal practices, it may well be the same for the equine, but they are, for several years now, they've been looking towards developing a hub and spoke practice with the vet in the center of the hub, but having or forming an allied professional network team that they can refer to. So they very much are looking out, or should be, for who's out there working and who they can reliably and confidently refer to their animals, or their cases, their clients. So certainly we at the PSFA would like to be working towards forming part of that network, or giving the vets confidence that we are working hard to comply with their setup, really, their practices. And that does depend on qualification, CPD, code of conduct, etc. So good things are happening. Okay, we get a hallelujah for that. And every occupation needs to be more holistic and work in a team. The vets combined with riders with deep pockets and too little knowledge is a very big issue. Okay, and yeah, so shall we take a 3-minute break, long enough to put the kettle on and stretch our legs and pat the dog and husband or wife or partner, etc. And we'll come back in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, have you all got your chocolate? So the next question is to the panel. If you had to choose, what is the most critical aspect of the fit for each of you, and why? And it's a very difficult question, but if you had to choose, what's the most critical aspect of the fit? And I've just put some images on the screen, which Jochen has kindly supplied. And so as they're your images, Jochen, you can go first.
Okay. It's two-part answers. The one is what is taught at the Spanish riding school since 400 years. The first thing, what the most critical is that the saddle is fitted to the rider. If the saddle does not fit the rider first, the rider will never have a pliable seat or perpendicular line and will never ride with half his weight. We know there's 5 different pelvises, 1 male and 4 female pelvises. So there you go. And we know the closest, some female pelvises are very close to the male pelvises. Mm-hmm. Make a long story short, we're living since 1978 in a world where over 90% of the horseback riders in English are women. And over 75% of the horseback riders in Western are women. Yet most saddles are made by men. I remember that when I was teaching and I had asked my mom, I says, Mom, why do I always get the women who don't try enough? My students don't try enough. And I had to go on saddle and show them how to ride. And they took telling me about how underwear line hits, or they hit there and hit here. Of course, we didn't get that knowledge in the saddle making business. When I followed my father's advice, my master saddler says, don't ask so many questions, do as I say, so I'm the master. And which is okay, because they learn from their master and so on and so forth. But as we now enter a world with horses who also changes dramatically in the breed, you see the top right horse, what has much wider chest, shorter legs, longer backs. We breeding, like Brad says, these more athletic, very hyper explosive horses with long legs, very short saddle support areas. And you end up with horses, you see in the top middle, who give up life. Okay, here you go, come on to me and do it again. Yes?
Sorry, Jochen, I've numbered the pictures so that it's easy for others to follow. Sorry, I thought I'd say. So it was 5 and 6 are the two contrasting.
Yeah, so you see the breed, how it changed. 5, how they used to be more workhorse and more stronger. And now we got these more athletic horses, number 6. And I was keen to read Brad's book, the third one, but I understand it's not in print yet. I'm also an author of 2 books. So I was, of course, I love to read and want to look into it. But we have other horses here as well, which is part 2 to your question, what's important after it fits the rider. Okay. Then comes the horse is not meant to carry weight. And as I mentioned earlier, Xenophon has written it down. You got to get the weight off the forehand. I yet have to see a rider who says, I ride heavy on the forehand and I'm proud of it. We all know first the back got to come up, the haunches got to come underneath, so the weight is light in the forehand. And it doesn't matter if you do barrel racing or reining or any kinds of a sport. So if we want to make the horse lighter in the front where we sit closer to the withers, the horse got to bring the back up. And I learned it from a body worker, a person who was an osteopath and a chiropractor. He says to me, you have a funny bone right here, and you don't need a lot of pressure, and you feel this zing all the way to your pinky. What if I would tell you your saddle pad, your girth, and your saddle could hit 14 of those parts on each of the horse's back, on each of the horse's side, so that's 28 in total, and the back won't come up. You have to, if I quote Tracy Turner, who's a veterinarian here in the States, who teaches saddle fitting to his vets, okay? So he quotes, pay attention to the first 8 circles. Don't wait until the nerve is numb. Okay, so you want to, when you fit, we love to fit to the dynamic horse, not to the static horse. Yeah, we measure the static horse, but let's face it. The saddle has to fit a movement and not in the cross tie. So I always recommend, please, please, please watch a horse on the lunge line. How does a horse go with anything? And then how does a horse go with the rider? I don't want to go too much in detail because we only have 2 minutes to answer this. And I want to give Maria and Bradley also a chance to dive in. Just to summarize up, the ever-changing width, angle, and position of the shoulder, it's absolutely crucial that the saddle can allow the tree width adjustment, tree angle adjustment, or the orthopedic adjustment left or right without twisting the tree. That's part 2, the most important part.
Sorry, I was just trying to show your illustration of that, but I'll come back to it in a moment. I'm just going to add another couple of questions that have been coming through here so that we can get them answered. I think it's a big issue that so many are manufacturing saddles that do not have a true fit to horse and rider. Watch this space. And yes, that also is not making anything easier. Can I ask people's opinions about foam flocked saddles? I think we may have to leave that for another summit to do with saddle fitting. This is more about protocol, but if we've got time for that, put it in at the end and we'll come back to that because it's a big topic and it depends on the horse and the rider, etc. And away from the sport horse market, there is the related problem of very shallow pockets and no knowledge, quite right. And Yes, that's sometimes even worse. And all the time, saddle fitters are fixing saddles to stop slip, forcing them to stay still rather than working on the root cause. The horse will suffer. I have 3 vet practices that refer to me, and I update them with my findings so that they keep seeing the benefit, which is so refreshing, but it is a small drop in the ocean scale wise. Well, you've certainly done it, managed that. But yeah, if you would like to come and talk to us about how you've achieved that, perhaps at our conference later in the summer, we would love to see you and find out what your magic and secrets are. And if Iberian horses are restricted at the withers, they go into submission. Nightmare, especially if riders ride towards the forehand. Okay, so Jochen, do you want to say any more about these images before I load some for Maria when she's answered the questions?
Yeah, so number one, we have, when I was working in England, and I worked back then when the company Barnsley was still around, and they were the main saddlery for one of the prestige riders from Holland, Ankie van Grunsven, and they've seen a lot of horses with deep shoulder pockets. You see the shoulder, and then you see the holes behind the shoulder, and then you see massive withers. You know, if you make the tree too wide, it crushes the withers. If you make the tree too narrow, it creates a massive pinching and the shoulder can't come through. So, and that's why I really wanted to bring this point across. Always ask your fitter, how do they adjust their tree width and their tree angle independent? And the rest is, as I said, I can go on forever here, but let's hear other fitters and panelists as well.
Okay, so Bradley, if you had to choose, what's the most critical aspect of the fit for you? While I load the next picture.
Well, that's a difficult one, isn't it? That's a very loaded question. I probably argue that there is not one which supersedes than the other. You know, I'm very much that all data is relevant. To try and pick one which is far more important than the other means that there's a hierarchy of suddenly procedure or process, which then means that one's more important than the other, and you can't, and that makes the others potentially irrelevant. The difficulty is we as fitters are dealing with different brands and different products and different materials. So the problem is that what is relevant and interesting and kind of important for one company is not necessarily relevant to another or to another manufactured product. So to try and label it down, I could tell you what's important for me and for my product, but I can't tell you what's going to be relevant and important for every product, because, you know, the way a carbon fiber tree reacts and behaves is completely different to a plastic tree, completely different to a wooden tree, completely different to the types of wooden tree which they use, whether it's wrapped in scrim or it's not, and so on and so forth. You know, all of those types of things have an influence upon how you fit those particular products. So in all honesty, and it's going to sound like a massive evasion, and I don't mean to, but I can't actually answer that question with my hand on my heart and say that one is more important than the other as a generality for the whole industry. I fundamentally can't, you know, because every product and every kind of material which is used behaves in a different way. So it sounds like a massive cop-out, and I don't mean to, but I can tell you what's relevant for me and for my product line and so on and so forth, but that's not going to be relevant for a wooden tree or anything like that. So just to go back for what Jochen said about pelvises, that is a bigger subject in upon itself, and I would love to sit down with all three of us and actually talk about pelvises and pelvis shapes and the kind of various things.
You will.
I really love to, because it's a great subject. The difficulty is just a kind of thing. Yes, there's 5 different shapes of pelvises. We don't generally, just as a sideline, we don't generally call them kind of male and female pelvises anymore. And that's because of kind of social change, which is now occurring, such as with trans and kind of various changes which are going on in kind of the social climate. We now kind of stick to the pelvic shape. So, gynecoid, platypoid, anthropoid and android. But the regards with pelvises, the main difference in the shapes are more to do with the pelvic inlet bowl rather than the pelvic outlet bowl. The pelvic outlet bowl is quite generic, to be honest. Yeah. So gynecoid, platypoid, and anthropoid and android are all to do with the pelvic inlet. As a generality, the pelvic outlet bowl, so the measurement from the ischial tuberosities from left to right, and AP, so pelvic pubis symphysis to the sacrum. So that's the pelvic outlet bowl. Those measurements are pretty similar, and I can say that because I'm as well as being equine, I was also a pregnancy specialist. So I've lectured international about pregnancy in different various countries. So I know this subject pretty well. The measurements are pretty similar. So a male is 116 millimeters, and a female is 134. So it's not even a 2 centimeter difference in the ischial tuberosity width. So that's just a by the by. But this is the pelvic kind of conversation is a fascinating conversation. We could spend hours talking about it, but I absolutely love it. And I really do want to kind of sit down and talk with Jochen and Maria about it, because it's I'm very kind of, those are the facts, those are the research papers, which have all kind of done anthropometric measurements. That's what it is. So yeah, that'll be a great conversation and a great piece to talk about.
Can I referee on this? Because we can't, like I said, I don't want to go on and on, but there are some female pelvic features. It's female, and it's much wider for the baby to sit there for 9 months. But when we're talking about saddle fit and saddle conformation, we do have, I believe, some differences in the rami, the angle, and also the acetabulum of the
So in measurements, so anthropometric measurements of pelvises, okay,
right,
there are standardized measurements which we all take, okay, and that is normal and that is standard. So the standard measurements are from ischial tuberosity to ischial tuberosity, so point to point, and then so from seat bone to seat bone, and then from the pubis symphysis out at the front to the sacrum, so i.e. the tail, right? No, on the bottom, on the pointy bit at the bottom. There you go. So you have a lateral measurement and an AP measurement. And in standardized anthropometric measurements at the external bowl, so the outward bowl, pelvic outlet, those are standard measurements. We have standard measurements for the pelvic inlet bowl, which is why you get the variance of the kind of wings of the ilia and various things like that. You are absolutely correct and true when talking about the angles of the rami in female pelvic. So the curvature and the angle of the rami from the ischial tuberosity to the pelvis, you are absolutely correct and true. Those angles do change, and they are relevant, but in anthropometric measurements, okay, they are not taken into consideration.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to have a summit for the pelvis and the rider and that sort of stuff, but I will where was I? Okay, so you've had your most critical aspect. Maria, have you had your most critical?
No, I haven't had here, but I have to agree with Brad. There is no one critical aspect. There are so many small details that are critical that will ruin a situation that seems good. So our job is really to be detectives, to understand what each aspect is bringing to the situation. And I want to give you an example, because in 2004, I borrowed my first pressure mat, or it wasn't mine, I borrowed one. And I was curious because we had horses coming in where we would put saddles on. 2 saddles would fit the way we looked at it. But the horses would very specifically choose one saddle. When I'm saying choose one, I would say it's when the horse becomes harmony, fluent, is pushing its front end up. It looks like what we would say a 4-wheel drive, really easy to ride, and it's coming up. So what I did was that I took 3 horses in to us that I knew had given us this specific answer before. And we put these 2 saddles on them and we rode them. And what we found was that the pressure was quite similar underneath the saddle. But the difference was you can measure the center of pressure and how it moves. So what made a difference to the horse was how much the rider moved. Because this thing that you see will either make a really big drawing or it will make a minimal drawing, meaning that the rider moved very little. So we're coming back to the Spanish riding school, what Jochen said here, that if the rider can sit still, if the rider is stabilized and can sit still, the horse will be a better ride. So from that, at that point, I also did my first test with sitting straight on the measure mat, and a couple of people doing so and trying to see, okay, where am I comfortable and where are you comfortable? So this was the first time I realized that as riders, we really needed different padding, different setups underneath us to sit correctly. I would always fall back and end up in a chair seat, breastbone going down, thinking that was my fault. And then you have people that are going forward, tilting forward into lordosis, thinking it's their fault. And you have all sorts of rider issues. So the point here is that unless the rider can stabilize and sit really still, unloading part of the horse's back, we cannot expect the horse to use the front push-up and its sling muscles to push up. And if the rider is then pushed into any kind of position, the rider will, just like the saddle, choose one side over the other. So we have a laterality problem in most situations, where the rider is falling to one side and holding on with one leg. And we have the horse rotating, of course, to that same side, becoming narrow on one side, wider on the other. And as soon as we have that situation, you will have a lot of other problems following. Pressure on the holding side, and you will have a thin side on the horse and a wider side. So that's causing pressure from the rider's legs, more on the wide side. So these pictures that we brought up here, if we look at the far right first, what we are looking for is the picture on the top, of course, the green picture. So we want the horse to be able to use its braking phase effectively, using its longissimus muscle in order to stop itself from falling forward too fast. And that is because the horse has the more lifting power in the front to push its front end up. And unless the horse can do that, we get the picture on the bottom, where it's actually sagging down between its shoulders. And that means that we are dropping the back forward. The pelvis is dropping forward, which is putting the whole pelvic, rhythm, and the back knees and the back, everything is really not working the way it should, because the horse cannot hold itself back to work functionally with the back end. So the saddle has to facilitate to get to the green point. And when I come out, or just look at the first pictures of a horse, I have to ask myself, is it possible to put a saddle on this horse now and get the result to the green? And if not, I should not offer to go out. I should offer this person some other advice, to find some other things to do in hand, and maybe some other professionals. Should we talk about it, Caroline, or do you want to say that?
I think if you just very quickly go through the pictures, because what we're looking at on the left is what you look for. Then we'll come back to the discussion while I've got your pictures here.
Yeah. Well, the picture on the left is actually from a very small pony from a riding school. And it's not really saddle related. This is rider related, because the saddle doesn't ride a horse lame, or doesn't, make that many things. It's the riding that is actually the problem. The saddle has to fit the horse, but if the riding isn't right, we're going to end up with problems. So we had this pony that was rotating and not straight in the back. And this pony was only ridden by very small children. And this riding school decided to start training these children in sitting properly on a horse, with and without saddle, and to train their lateral balance and strength, so that they could really control these horses, coming around corners, going straight, and so forth. And in a 2-3 month period, they took the second picture of the pony, and the pony had started to straighten out just by the kids riding it better. And I think what we want to drive home here is that if you have rotation going on and you have issues with laterality in the rider, no saddle can fix it. So one of the most important points is that we actually have the discussion with the rider and start to look at the rider in how the rider is affecting their horse. Because if we don't deal with rider laterality very fast, none of the good work we do on the saddle is actually going to hold up. So that's very important, and that comes from rotation. And we look at the pictures in the middle there. That was a picture we got on a horse, that first one. And of course we said, no, we're not going to come out and fit this horse, because he's not looking really good at this time. Are you actually riding this horse, we asked. And she said, no, we can't ride it because he's just running forward. We don't know what to do. And we actually only asked her to lead the horse for 2 weeks, very, very slow, and down, up and down, and downhill a little bit. So the following 2 pictures you have is 3 or 4 days later, and then 10 days later. And you see how fast that horse transformed its top line and its balance, and started to relax. And actually, when you see the pictures big, you see all the angles changed. So I think it's very important that as a fitter, we know when we look at a horse what the problem areas are, so that we can decide how to help that rider to go forward, to be honest with them, and basically lead them the right way, instead of trying to fit and have a bad situation. When you look at the drawing, that's the next picture. That was just a horse that we saw just last weekend. They've been treating this horse a lot, and it's been a very angry horse, and it's been to different people. And the horse was quite narrower and a little bit low as we started. And then you see the second top line picture is the higher one, where you see a longer wither line. And this is also important, that we don't just think that this is what this horse looks like. We have to sometimes expand our idea and think, okay, if I give this horse a chance to come up, if I put on another tree, how will this horse react to that? Will it come up and meet us and show us the picture where the horse is green on the top, or will it sag down even more, become even more crooked? So the most important thing is that we always ask the horse, and that we are then discussing with the rider, how does that feel to you? This is how it looks to me. Take some pictures, do some film, and then go back and say, okay, what do we think is going on here? Where should we go? So I think that ping pong question, thinking, looking, understanding, trying to read the horse, that is the key to what we are doing. And that is the key to get the rider involved in the process, that they are able to impact how straight the horse is if it comes up. They are responsible for a lot more than they think today. And that is very, very important for us to convey to the customer.
How long time is it between the two lines?
Right.
20 minutes between those two lines.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would just want to clarify that the picture on the bottom left, sorry, it's not numbered, because number 1 wasn't quite clear. I've put in picture number 2 so that you could see what's being evaluated. So, and I put a red line in. The picture's taken from directly above the horse. What you're looking for, quite simply, a 2-year-old kid could do this and get the answer if they can speak. But you can see quite clearly one side of the horse is showing more rib cage than the other. And you can see in picture number 2, that horse is basically statically more symmetrical. I won't say symmetrical. No. And so that's one test you can do. Have a look. Because I think what Maria was saying was that looking at the horse on the bottom left, that apart from the horse not being able to turn one way compared with the other, that horse is going to feel different to sit on because it's going to be rotated and the saddle will probably impact, etc., etc. And the other thing I just want to add, I just have to let you know what my most critical aspect is. It goes right back to the beginning and it ties in with what the others were touching on, is this rider stability and that wither lift. So that when you do your gait analysis and you see the horse trotting past you from the side, you're not just looking to see if they're lame or compensating, but what you want to see is the withers lifting. Actually, I'll go to picture number 5. The withers must lift slightly, and quite often the rider and the saddle together will block that. But you need to start with a horse that can engage the thoracic sling, because if you add a rider and a saddle to a horse that doesn't engage the thoracic sling, it's not going to work properly. Yeah, so great. Right. Jochen.
Can I just add?
Yeah, sure.
Just one thing to what Maria's suggested, and there's no issues with that whatsoever. I completely agree with it and everything like that. I'm just going to try and bring it back to the whole process of procedure. We have a variety of individuals here who are involved in the equine world, from therapists all the way through to saddle fitters. When we do this kind of procedure and the analysis and so on and so forth, you've got to remember that if you are a saddle fitter, legally, and if you are only a saddle fitter, legally you are not allowed to prescribe exercises. Okay. So therefore, having another qualification or something, you are legally allowed to prescribe exercises if you are a therapist, if you are a qualified riding instructor, if you have a rehabilitation qualification, or you have a qualification in remedial saddle fitting. Those are the 4 things which allow you to then prescribe exercises. So it's very important that we're talking about procedures, the whole point of this is to talk about a procedural process. If you are doing this analysis, which is really important and is really, really good, we've also got to, it would be irresponsible for us to then turn around and kind of go, right, you can prescribe these exercises if you are not qualified to do that. So you've got to remember that if you have a qualification in those 4 things, i.e. you're a therapist, you're an equine therapist, you're a trainer, you have a qualification in remedial saddle fitting, and you have a qualification in remedial exercise and training, then you are perfectly allowed to provide exercise. If you don't, then you must either speak to the trainer or the therapist, who is then able to do that. So that's just because we're talking about procedures and protocols, we want to protect you. We want to provide that information. So, that's another layer of protection for you.
Bradley, that is in UK. So we have different.
Yeah, absolutely. In the UK. Obviously the rules and the laws are different in Europe, in America, in various other different countries, but I'm just saying in the UK, and Maria's absolutely correct in kind of flagging that up, that in the UK, if you are only a saddle fitter, and I don't mean that derogatory, are not allowed to prescribe exercises. As I say, Maria, more than happy, your knowledge and expertise in terms of Europe, you can kind of provide people, because I'm sure there's people here from Europe who can kind of who would love that information, and I'm sure with Jochen it would be very much the same, providing that level of knowledge so that they can or they can't. But in the UK, that is the law, and we don't want to put people at risk. So it's a way of, again.
Yeah, I think it does come back to the first do no harm, and the professionalism is that you should always, every practitioner should be working within their competence level and what they're trained and qualified to do, and within their skill set. They might know some fantastic exercises that work for them and their horse, but we can evaluate and we can learn how to point out these things, and we can refer, no problem. So yeah, definitely I'm with Bradley on this one. And this is where other professionals come in, and the networks, etc., etc. And it's that old modern sport horse that is making this more complex, I think.
Well, what's complex also is that the veterinarians are not really, and have not really, as Jochen said, been investing that much in rehabilitation of the horse or in prehab. They normally meet the horse when something has gone wrong.
Right.
And then they have a license not to harm. And I think there is coming now more interest in rehab and prehab. So there has to be a way that knowledge about all these things, what do we do and what do we not do? Because a lot of things that have been prescribed to horses that have been having issues are not really that good for the horses, but that was that knowledge that they had at that time. So everywhere we're saying knowledge is changing, and we're all evolving. And one of the things that I think we need to do is to work over the borders of professions together. That is the only way to really evolve, because the vets need to know what we know, and we need to go next to the vets to see, how do you evaluate? What do you see? And so forth. We need to be quite complex. And the reason a fitter might actually see more things is that we see the horse in the stable. We see the horse under different saddles. We see it under rider. We might see it lunged. And then we may come back and see it again. So we see that horse in more contexts than sometimes the vet do.
Yeah. And I just want to advocate that every equine equestrian professional who has any contact, professional contact or input or intervention with the horse, has to evaluate them, because they can't not see what they see. We all have to open our eyes and learn more, that's the way the industry is going. And it's great that professionals do have CPD, and there are a lot of very committed saddle fitters out there looking at gait and looking at the rider. And there's also a lot of therapists out there looking at saddle fit and checking. So the lines of the skill set are blended.
Can I ask a question here? Because your law in UK is quite special.
Yeah.
Because you have the CPD courses as well.
Yeah.
If a saddle fitter is taking a CPD course, let's say in a VBR or in some other training method or rehab method, does that mean that that fitter suddenly has the right to do something else on top of just fitting?
It's not about the right, it's more about insurance and professional
Yeah, I know,
insurance.
but what kind of education would they need to add as a fitter? Because this, I only use fitters who are also use, body workers or trained with as physios. But I think you have many fitters who are not even allowed to, or we're not allowed to have those other specialties for a while. So what does these UK fitters need to do to be able to also work and look more at the horse physical part?
There is an occupational standard which has been published and which is being adopted now.
Mm-hmm.
So that is more to do with standardizing the training. So yes, the gait analysis, the rider evaluation, that is on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's open to interpretation about how far you can go or how far you want to go, but it is on there. So that will depend on the trainers and what they offer and how they interpret that occupational standard.
Yeah, because if we're looking at protocol for a fitter, it's not enough that we know how to put the saddle on the horse.
Yeah,
or what saddle to choose. That is not gonna cut it anymore. We have to know so many things. So we need to maybe look at where do we expand the protocol? What do we need trained fitters in to make them allowed to do a certain assessment of how the horse moves? What can the horse do? What can it not do? What can the rider do? What is the rider unable to do? So that we know, is this a horse problem or a rider problem? And the more we test, the more we find that a lot of laterality in horses is actually a rider problem. And that means a lot of saddle problems is also a rider problem. So we need protocol.
There are a lot of advanced saddle fitters. I don't think we can even state or what a saddle fitter is anymore, because I think every fitter tends to be different these days, and it is the CPD being offered and the training that's evolving and the standards are being set by this occupational standard. So when that's adopted and more courses are written, then that will sort that issue out. I must come back to Jochen now, because we're nearly at the end, just about. Now, we haven't spoken to you since the pelvis came out, Jochen. So I'm going to, you must be itching to say something. So I'm going to give you the one of the final words.
Okay, so the exciting part, what I took away was that we might do another summit where we talk about pelvises. Yeah. I'm happy to share our butt museum, where we have over 100 different riders' bottom impression. We have a horseback, looks like a horseback, and the interface between the human and the horse is what we call the saddle. So we have a saddle what is out of a very special foam, and then you sit in there for 15 minutes and you have your butt impression. Because very often people say, hey, I'm looking like a man. And when they get off that butt impression, they cannot believe the difference. Like you already says, we may be looking at the birth channel, but when it comes to saddle fitting, if you look at the historians who do saddle fitting, if it's the Chinese, if it's the Middle Ages, 40 days bronco riders, there's a spot on the horse which the least amount of movement of the horse. And every bareback rider knows where that is. They sit themselves automatic there. And if we follow the philosophy, which is taught in 400 years, which is you have to have a pliable seat. I think, and Brad's, or I can't be, sorry if I mixed you two up, Maria or Brad, in one of your videos I watched, you talked about the neutral pelvis. I think it was you, Bradley, where we said, well, we have to watch the genitalia as well, because sometimes I can't put a man in the so-called neutral pelvis and crush its parts. You know, that's the first thing I learned in saddle making, was that you need to create a roof in the crotch so the man's parts go left or right. That there's not one woman, no matter which of the 4 pelvis you have as a woman, where you want to sit on a rooftop, right? So that we also know from all these butt impression from not as a professor or teaching in terms when it comes to earth channels, but simple of seeing those different types of bodies, man and female, how different the impact of the pubic symphysis, pubic branches, or the seed bones, tailbone, everything, you know. And if we, as a saddle maker, make a ground seat, doesn't matter if it's Western saddle or English saddle, doesn't matter. If I look at 9 different features there, then I can give the rider what they taught at the Spanish riding school, the chance to have a pliable seat. In other words, ride half the way, which is another seminar you want to address about the rider's weight, right? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that symposium when we talk about and share our pelvis findings. And I also like to reiterate that you as a fitter out there, anybody who's listening to us, you'll be challenged, as Bradley said. You know, there's different materials out there, different saddles. You may or may not sell the one or the other company. You're like a fitter what has to fit everything what's out there. So, and you need to understand what and how these products interact with the biomechanic movement of the horse and the rider. But in the end of the day, as I said, there's 8 different fitting philosophies. You have to pick one. I know which one I pick, but each fitter needs to pick what makes the most sense. You know, there's many saddle companies who make that they love the one fits all method. Okay, they call it the clothespin fit. So that's their belief. But if you, as the fitter there, you want to protect the horse, you want to protect your reputation, and you want to represent and help the manufacturing industry to sell their saddles, right? So it's a massive topic. Caroline, I said that to you in the WhatsApp. My head's up to you. You know, you're a very brave person. I think this is just an iceberg what the 3 of us do here. And I'm sure willing to share my 45 years of experience and the over 260,000 measurements we have on horse and rider, and obviously Bradley and Maria too.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think in the nutshell, it needs to start with the procedure, and you need to follow your heart, what you believe is right. And to what Bradley said in terms of you cannot recommend treatments, and always say, and I might put my foot in the mouth here, but you can always say, if this is my horse, I would go and find myself a professional and maybe get a second opinion to look at other alternatives. So you didn't describe it, you just give your opinion as a horseman or horsewoman, which comes most of the time from the bottom of your heart. Isn't that what we all do? Sure, it's a money business. It's all about money. I get it. But I don't think we are sitting there in all these weather conditions out in the barn and fit saddles because it's such a great money-making thing. We do it because of our passion to the animals. And I think that's what comes across from every single fitter out there.
We certainly are, or saddle fitters certainly are a caregiving group. Certainly. I thought you were just going to do your underwear joke there, Jochen, where ladies would not go to the men's department for their underwear or their breeches. Yeah. But you can tell that better than I can.
Well, it was at the big horse show in Houston. So that was in Texas, where this male cowboy rider came. So what's this female Western saddle? He wouldn't listen until I says, do you wear female jeans or male jeans? Well, my parts wouldn't fit in a female jeans. I wear male jeans. Oh, okay. You ride female or male underwear? Then he clicked in. I mean, there's very few guys who go and buy in the women's department. Okay, fair enough, Bradley. We live in the part where we have now the theys and the sex changes, but the bone structure, there is only so much you can do. You have to change the Maria, you have some beautiful graphs on your website on the images where you show the difference in the neck of the femur from the different sexes, and you have different. You talked about the lower curvature. We talked about the length of the coccyx. I mean, there is tons and tons and tons of stuff there. In the end of the day, we got to make a decision. Do I buy breeches in the male department or female department? First step. And then,
but I have to disappoint you there, because a lot of us women will go to the men's department to buy our underwear to ride in.
okay.
Sorry, because we need a better leg and a longer leg, so we don't sit on the bloody seam.
Yes. Well, I think we will enjoy that when we share our past. That's why the saddle makers have the choice of make the seam very narrow to a roof, or very wide to pass these underwear. So anyway, make a long story short, we all had our customers experience who say, I will never ride in that type of clothes. So why would I ride in that type of saddle?
Well, there you go. We've all bared our souls now. Who would have thought it was down to the underwear? We're looking for protocol here. Can I just do a couple of comments from the audience? This question's come in about 25 times. What's the app called that Jochen referenced, please?
The what?
The app that you talked about on the phone about an hour and a half ago.
The scanner app.
Yeah, I send it to you.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the email.
The company is called Horse Shape. Okay, they used to have this big lunchbox scanner, and you had to put little dots on the horse's back. Now it's
Equiscan.
Yes, no, not Equiscan. Horse Shape.
Horse Shape. Okay.
Equiscan is the uncle from. So, if you have a phone what has Face ID, right? You can actually, it takes literally 3 seconds. If you do low to high, it won't vibrate. If it vibrates and go click, you took the picture and you instantly have it on your phone. So their Equitana is open in Germany right now, and they're up for Product of the Year award. So it's Horse Shape. And Caroline, if you like, I can send you.
Yeah, you send it and I'll pass it on via email, or you can ask me, or I'll put it. We'll make a post of that in Learn Saddle Fitting. That's what we'll do. And yeah, about the 3-point angle fit to shoulder angle. This is for you, Jochen, or the angle behind the scapula. Does it depend how displaced the shoulder is, bulge, for example, from area where the saddle naturally falls behind the scapula? Does that
yeah, so maybe you can share that one image I showed you with.
Hold
on.
While
you guys are looking for the picture, I had that one. I think that those picture you were just showing of horses standing, if we're talking about protocol, if we bring it back to that, I think it's important that we bring into the idea here that asking for pictures of horses standing properly from the side, from each side, before a booking, so that you know more about the horse and can discuss the horse with the rider before, not just going out cold meeting. I think that is an important part of the protocol, and it will improve the quality of the work that you can actually do when you get out there as a fitter.
100%.
Anyone who is not really asking for pictures or preparing by really looking into the situation will have a much harder time to actually be professional when they get out there, because it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of looking through saddles and maybe not having the right situation in front of you.
Yeah. Caroline, is the picture in front of that?
We were doing so well, weren't we, with my picture show?
However, Annika did transfer the horse, the scanner thing to you. Horse shape. So you have that now.
Yeah, I have that. I've put it in the comments.
And I got also a little video what I sent you from them.
Yeah, got that. We'll share that. Have I got the right picture now, Jochen?
Yes. So as we all know, most fitters and riders, horses do not have a collarbone and do graze on the ground. So the holy grail of riding is get the weight of the forehand. And when the horse carries weight, the serratus and the pectoralis, so the circle of muscles where the rib cage hangs, I make it very simple. I know Bradley already crosses his eyes probably. But my point, what I'm trying to make is, if I lift weight, even with my collarbone, my shoulders gets wider. And when my shoulder gets wider, it also rotates farther back, even more so on the horse. So the picture on the left, you see the bottom line, elbow, sternum, elbow. When the horse is engaged, you see the sternum higher. Now, you could say, well, if it's not engaged, it's down again. But just like humans, if a human has a bad posture and for minutes stands up straight, he will collapse. But horseback riding is training a horse. Dressage, French word for training. So I'm the jumper, eventer, pleasure rider, or Western rider. These muscles get artificial stressed by putting load on it. So now I come to the question. If I would like to make a saddle fitted and my horse changes through so many factors, we know if we put a number, let's say 6. The width of the shoulder and the width of the withers, okay, very rare are exactly the same, and neither is the angle always the difference. Just to come back after all the quick picture hunting, to be very clear, ask me the question again, because there was a multiple part in that question.
Okay. The question was about the 3-point angle fit to shoulder angle, or the angle behind the scapula. Does it depend how displaced the shoulder is? So if it's bulged, for example, from area where the saddle naturally falls behind, which is behind the scapula.
Okay. So in order to come to one common denominator, where should the saddle fit? Right? I belong to a massive, big show jumping class, and they won multiple Olympic medals. Okay, and they believe that the saddle, the 3-point, the pommel needs to sit on the shoulder. So no matter what saddle fitter you are, Bradley's laughing because he's a jumper himself. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? Yet every historian, anybody who knows anything about biomechanics, knows that is a massive issue. Never mind when we talk acupuncture, the lung meridian point, and so on and so forth. So then we have people who say the saddle should be placed anywhere from 2 centimeter to 5 centimeter behind the shoulder. So now you go, oh my God, is it on the shoulder? Is it 2 centimeter behind the shoulder? Where is it? Okay, so when in the question came to where it naturally falls, if we look at a skeleton from the side, okay, the 4 vertebrae, the 7 vertebrae of the neck form an S, and then go slightly up towards the back of the butt. So the top of the rib cage where the saddle sits, it's downhill. The rib cage is broad and goes narrow towards the front, to the girth area. So the tendency of the saddle is to go to the narrow spot, or like in the question was saying, where the saddle wants to sit. Okay, so if you want to force the saddle on the shoulder, or 5 inches further back, it goes into that pocket. Every saddle maker, there's hardly any saddle you will see what makes saddle trees without 3 points. The metal point or the side, if that would be gone, if there would be no 3 points, you can go through history out, the saddle would zip over the ears. So what holds the saddle from not going forward? So if we put the saddle, let's just for the sake of argument, not 5 centimeter behind, not on top of the shoulder, behind the shoulder. No matter how many horses you measure, You have on your phone an app for free. Okay, you go, it calls protractor or measurements. There's a level. You can hold that phone on top of the shoulder. Now the question comes, where? Go to the widest spot on the horse's shoulder. Then you go down. Let me see if I have it here. I got a little pony leg. Okay. Then you go down 8 inches from the highest point of the withers. Okay. You put that phone on in the middle, 8 inches, and then you see it pivots. Okay. Part of the phone is on the cartilage. The other part of the phone is at the spine of the scapula. Okay. This is unfortunately very small. I don't know where my large shoulder blade goes.
Oh,
And my
I
shoulder.
got one.
There you go. Go a little lower and show us the end of the spine of the shoulder blade. So go higher. Yeah. Back towards the top. Yeah. See there, it's all of a sudden it disappears, right? It molds into it, right? See that? Okay. Okay. Here we go. See how that goes? There you go. There's the flat spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you hold your phone on that angle. Okay. As I said, part is on the cartilage, part is on top. Why 8 inches? Okay. That's an average. If you have a little pony, obviously you don't go that deep. If you have a massive shire, you go a little bit higher. But you will find that angle, write it down, right? As I said, this thing is for free. It measures angles. Do it left and right side. And then you do the same thing where the saddle sits. So collect 4 angles. Very easy, cost you nothing. You don't even have to be a trained saddle fitter. Okay, you just have to know where should I put the saddle. How far would you go down with this, with the phone? On behind the bone. Again, make it very simple. We measure horses in hands. When you measure horses in hands, the soldiers map the horse's back. They put their hand on the wither cup, and 4 inches down, they put the hand again. And that gives you the approximately area where the longissimos dorsi run. So you can choose. Do you want that angle or the tree sitting on the wither cup, where the splinalis, rhomboideus, and trapezius is? Or do you want it lower, where the fattest, longest wither muscle is, the back muscle, longissimos? So you put that phone 4 inches down from the top of the withers and measure that angle. So one more time, 8 inches down on the shoulder, but don't press here, don't press there because it wibbles. Press in the middle. And then go behind the shoulder, 4 inch down. Now you measure the angle there. Do it on at least 10 horses. Do lots of horses, and you will see you will never find a horse where both are the same, or at least close to be the same.
I think, Jochen, you've started the next summit. So, and we've run over time. Sorry, this is absolutely gripping stuff. So we'll definitely have where should the saddle fit. We need a whole summit on that, if not 2. And also the rider, that we definitely need a rider session. Just a couple more comments, then we really must go. As a biomechanics coach, the rider sitting correctly is so important. Love what Maria is saying. And is a reference available for that interesting research, the one that you mentioned, Maria? We'll get that for you. And using Maria's techniques is revelatory. Cannot agree more. Wish you had a visual of the electromagnetic pressure pads. We can get that in the next session. Doesn't the main part from one side to the other if the spine is not in alignment? Sorry, I can't have Jochen going on for 20 minutes about that. But yeah, you do have something interesting to say about the main. Jochen, can you do that in 10 seconds?
All right. No. So again, go to the barn, count how many horses are, and then count how many horses main goes to the left, how many go to the right, and which horse have the main split absolutely even. You will have horses where first part of the neck goes to the left, second part to the right, or vice versa. You will have opinions from shoers, blacksmith, right, or osteopath, chiropractors, saddle fitters, and trainers. But the fact is, you will see the majority of the horses carry the mane to the right. We have, even in the hunter jumper sport here, or in the Western world, they train the mane to the left. They wet the horse's mane, and overnight they wrap the whole neck to keep the mane on the left, while they want natural going to the right. There is actually a very old, and again, I quote McClellan, who has a saddle designed in 1857. He designed a saddle so that the soldier can put the girth, the rigging, in a different position on the left versus the right, depending on the side where the mane falls at the withers. So when we know something what's over 150 years old, why have we forgotten?
He also made a swivel tree.
So I mean, there is parts what it's been there, and it's interesting stuff. But I think today's session was that we all been around the block. We all come from different profession, and we all want to help out there. And there's a lot of people who need saddle fitters who want to educate them. And the three of us are here to help you all. But we can't do it all in 10 seconds.
No. Okay. The photos tell you so much, one from each side. The balance of the rotated horse will tell you a lot. More uphill one side, more and downhill the other. I think saddle fitters should be taking photos, because you can see a lot from a photo later than you can often when you've got the horse in front of you. There'll be things that jump out. So photos, very important.
One more thing with that is that you can follow up. What did the horse look like? So when you go back, we have customers that stay with us for years or even 6 months later. And they say, oh, there's a problem now. Okay, send me a photo of your horse right now. And then I'll look up the one you sent me, and I'll have fitters go out and say, I must have been drunk when I fitted this horse, because the saddle I come out to today doesn't fit at all. And I'm like, oh, where are you? What horse it is? And I send the picture back of what the horse used to look like. And they're like, okay, maybe I wasn't drunk then. So it's really, really good to have a first protocol before you even start, because it does give you a really good way to look back. Where were we and what way were we heading?
And years ago, we didn't have these. So now we've got them. Use them. You are allowed to recommend exercises as long as you are insured. Yeah, for sure. And qualified, I would say. Very interesting, thought-provoking and enjoyable, this session. When you talk of the rider's biomechanics, do consider involving Mary Wanless if you haven't already. For sure, I got a lot of my early training from Mary Wanless, so she is also a wizard. So yes, we'll talk to Mary as well.
We are, I think, already doing things with Mary Wanless students and trainers through Steph Bloom. So it's really interesting stuff going on. What they were trying to achieve with training the rider desperately. We find that sometimes if the saddle just isn't against the rider, it's definitely much easier to get the rider to do what they were trying to make them do. Yes,
sure. So yeah, we need to make contact there. And I've got a comment, or no underwear, haha. There's a solution. Oh, we hit rock bottom now, haven't we? Okay, good suggestion. Can we be added to an alert for the pelvis lecture? Yes, that's fine. We will re-email you all. And I've started working with Ride With Your Mind and other Biomex coaches. That's Mary Wanless as well, Ride With Your Mind, showing them that the assessment techniques and saddles, it's how we should work in the UK, as there's such a wealth of talent and experience there. Yeah, massively. We're spoiled in this country, this little country where we can all get together quite easily. And I've said that the app was the Horse Shape Smart 3D scan, but we'll pass that on.
We have a question on that one. Does anybody know what the cost is for this one? Because they seem to leave that information out. Do you know, Jochen?
I know that the app is free. The way they make money is if you want to have, like you can go to any print store, and they can cut out then the cutouts, which you stick together like a puzzle, and then you put on the horse's back. So that's where they make the money. So,
what I understand hi Jochen, I'm sorry, I'm just a voice from the side here.
Yeah, she's the tech. she's the tech side of our company. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. But what I see is that they do have a full scan kit, so it's not only they do sell the whole scanner, the whole hardware part of it. It's not just so they are coming out and doing the scans for you, or
No.
That was the scan. The scan kit was the first start.
It's the first one. All right, cool.
One. So if you think about cell phone, remember the first cell phones with the cable in the big box.
No, I didn't show a picture.
It's an app on the phone.
Yeah, photogrammetry.
And that app is for free. And the way they make money, if you want to have
print,
you see the bag, you can spin it. Okay. I put a little German video. I only had the German video so fast. I text that to you.
I'll share that. Yeah, I got that.
You have it in your WhatsApp group. So
yeah, that's fine.
And you ask for money, Maria. That's how they make money. So when you ask them to send you the data, so you print it out.
Yeah,
I think it's absolutely fantastic because it goes with what you're saying, Maria. Make an image before you start.
Yeah, then write again.
I mean, so much easier than all these tracings. And I mean, we still do tracings, but
anything that saves time.
Okay, I'm gonna start winding up because I'll get into trouble now if I don't. We haven't lost many viewers actually, which is a very good sign. So we've got about the scapulae. Yes, I'm sure it can be explained without pictures. It's tree point angle to which area, and dependent on horse shape and back length. She says, right, question mark, but don't start Jochen again.
I think Jochen has a website and that she can contact him. I think he may.
One for me, Caroline, can you share your website? Yeah, you get to me. You see my name there, Caroline Lindsay. Just put the .com on the end and that will get you to my website. And the research was about horses preferring riders which moved less. So Maria, if you could pass that on to us. And this is awesome. Thank you, says our shoulder lady. Yes, more please. You'll get that. And thank you all very much. It was super interesting. It surely was. This is so interesting. Thank you. Andy Thomas, chartered physiotherapist. That's the test with a double T on the end. Would be interesting to add for rider biomechanics. So interesting. Wish you can do a follow-up to this. We will read your emails that we send you for the booking link. So interesting. Oh, we've done that. Annika, come into view, please. Annika, can we have you popping into view so that they can identify you? Yay! Hello, Annika. Annika's a legend.
Am I a legend? Oh, dear.
Yes, she's a researcher. Anyway, we'll have Annika back as well. Thank you. Looking forward to the next summit. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Really valuable. Very many thanks to you all for giving your time on this very interesting and informative summit. I was just going to say that. Great team of professionals to learn from. Thank you all. I think that says it all for this evening. So I won't waffle on about how amazing this has been. And I've told you what the next summit's going to be. And the replay will be available. If we need pictures added, I can add those in. And if I could ask for one more comment each from the panel for 10 seconds if you wish to speak. Other than that, it's thank you and good night from me.
Ladies first.
I was just going to say that I think it's time to say goodnight. I want to thank you all for having the patience with us, and I look forward to continuing this, because I think it's important. And you know, we may invite you know, more people when we go into specific subjects, because this is what we need. We need to be talking to each other in this industry, not just sit in a corner each.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't, not meant to sound rude, I can't add any more to this. You know, this is exactly what you need. You know, I've been pining for it for about 20 odd years whilst working in the industry. So yeah, I hope this continues. I want it to continue. So yeah, we've just got to have that kind of cross referral, cross conversation. And it's actually really good. I think it's good that you've got three very different opinions and views, which are all coming in, but we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but slightly from a slightly different pitch, you know, and that's quite beautiful to see, because all of us are certainly right, and all of us we can all learn from each other, and we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So, you know, I'm definitely keen to continue this.
Thank you.
Keep going and seeing if we can all help, because ultimately at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether one of us is right or we're all right. You know, we're all looking for the end goal, which is, you know, protection and kind of safety for everyone and for the industry. So, you know, if I'm not involved with the next one, I'll probably still be there, because I want to get involved and help in any way, shape or form.
Of course you're involved in the next one. We're doing rider weight and saddle design and whatever we think of after that. So yeah, fantastic. Jochen, you get the last word. I promise.
So,
one word.
No pressure.
With what my master told me, it takes 3 human lifetimes to learn how to ride. And I took this into my profession as a saddle maker, designer. That is our duty to teach what we learned. And what I learned already just in this 2 hours and prior to our conversation and looking at your stuff, it's beyond the world, and it's us. I mean, I just turned grandpa a week ago, and my second daughter is in labor as we speak. They're like only 2 weeks apart. So I'm an old man now. I'm 60 years old, and I'm not going to do this forever. So for all your saddle fitters out there, Bradley has continued what's on the market with split trees, double trees. They have been on the market differently, of course. And get yourself a therapist saddle. They come in Western and in English, which means you can do the feel right there and there. It looks a little weird, but as a therapist or as a saddle fitter, saddle designer, you can give the rider the feel. Because what people hear goes in, out. What people see there, maybe remember, but what they feel, they understand. And with this, good night. Thank you very much. It was a great time with you.
Thank you. And another couple of comments. Sorry, I must mention these. Everybody gets a mention. Great team. Oh, we've done that one. A very good summit. Thank you. Thank you all. A very interesting session. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the discussion. Looking forward to more. Thank you all so much. So motivating. So it's over and out from us, and we look forward to seeing you all again.
And thank you very much, Caroline, for doing
that. Thank you. Well done.
Pleasure.
Very brave woman who has decided to do this. So yeah, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.